Hello and welcome back to The Life She Built. Today I have a really fun episode for you. It is part one of a two-part series, and it is an interactive one or a semi-interactive one. So today what I will do is answer some questions that we had from our guests at the launch party. They had their own little podcast studio set up and were able to ask me any questions. So just as a quick heads up here, we will have some background noise in their questions. There was a lot of hustle and bustle going on during the party, which we love. But just so you know, if it's not 100% clear, that is why there was a lot of happenings going on behind the scenes. I have all of the questions here in my handy dandy little iPad. I will play them for you and then I will answer them.
I'm Tracy Jasmine, and I am from Edmonton, Alberta. And the question I have is if you could go back to the day you started your business and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh man, this is quite the question because hindsight being 2020, of course there's all of these things that I want to say to the younger version of myself that was just starting the business, but I think I would keep that actually a fairly simple answer. And my answer would be just be prepared for a ride. Do not get so stuck on business needing to look a certain way. Know that it's okay to ebb and flow throughout the business journey and as your life evolves. It is totally okay to have a version of your business on day one, and then that version changes as your life changes and as you change. So that's the biggest thing that I would say is be prepared for a ride and know that you are not on anyone's timeline. It is your journey and it's okay to go at your own pace and things.
It's Annie here, and I wanted to know, when did you realize you were over functioning in your business? And what was the first thing you stopped doing?
Man, I think for me, it took me longer than I wish it would have to realize that I was over functioning. So if you listen to episode 2, you will know that for the majority of my life, I kind of was that overachiever, over functioning, over producing. So to me, that was just my norm to be doing way more and to be way more involved than truly I should have been doing. Where for me it really clicked was when I started recognizing and realizing that I was no longer behaving like a person that I'm proud of. I was so stressed and so tapped, and my mental, physical, and time capacity was just stretched to a point that was just unreasonable. And as a result of that, I started acting like a person I'm not proud of. My patience level was non existent. I had a really hard time behaving in a way that I would normally want to. I didn't want to have collaborations. I didn't want to have conversations. And that's really not like me. And that's when I started realizing that something was not working. And that something was that I was just doing way, way, way too much. And what I gave up first, it's really interesting because I wish that I could say the answer was something like I gave up admin or I gave up, but I was a little bit more drastic in it. And I think it's because I didn't see those little symptoms and signs, or even if I saw them, I didn't act on them in maybe the proper way that would have been helpful to me. So rather than, making little changes along the way, I just started cutting off arms of my business, so to speak. I made drastic changes in my business. And for me, that was the right move. I'm really glad that I did that, but I don't know if I would necessarily recommend that. Looking back at my life and how I was handling business, I do wish that I would have just listened to the little signs that my body and my mind was sending me and made those changes, but I didn't. Long story short, I knew when I was no longer behaving like a person that I'm proud of, and I knew that I needed to make drastic changes. So for me, I just cut off arms of the business, and that's what I did.
This is Carrie from St. Albert. You talk about carrying prove myself energy into motherhood. How do you actively unlearn that so your kids don't absorb it?
Oh, this is a really tricky one, isn't it? Because as parents, we have heard the do as I say, not as I do. However, our kids do as we do. And we know that they do as we do. And long term, that can be really challenging. And I will say for myself, especially as, the same sex parent, I have two daughters. I know that I am their biggest role model, whether they want to admit it now or not. But I know that I'm their biggest role model, and they will absorb, a lot of it subconsciously, a lot of the actions that I'm doing now and a lot of the ways that I'm behaving and living my life into their adulthood. So, my answer to this question is that I show them how I want them to live in the future. And for me, that goes with not always proving myself. I allow my kids to see a lot of imperfections as a mom now. I allow them to see me not be at my best. I allow them to see me struggle with things, but we have those conversations, and I explain why those things are happening and what I'm doing about it, so that they also know that I'm not necessarily at the mercy of what is happening or at how I'm feeling that day. But just to say, it's okay to feel this way, it's okay to be this way, it's okay to make mistakes, and then how do we actually go out of that? The other thing that I really allow myself is for my kids to see me resting. I think that's one thing that a lot of us didn't see our moms doing. So I allow them to see me be, quote, lazy. I allow them to see me laying down and even when the sink is full of dishes, I allow all of that. And I think that's really important. And then again, on the flip side, always remembering that this is not the only, mode that we operate in. There's also, getting things done and being productive, but it's okay to have both sides as a human being. I think that's really important. And like I said, so for myself is I don't carry it into motherhood because I show that to them, and all I can do is hope that they will pick those pieces up and make it their own life later on. Another way that I avoid the prove myself energy or passing that on to them is for them to also see me having a very full life. Because I think sometimes as women, we are only, quote, proving ourselves in business or proving ourselves in our homes. But my children see me being a very full person, and they see me having female friendships and going out with girlfriends, and they see me going on dates with their dad while they stay home with the babysitter. They also see me building a business, and they know that sometimes mom won't be here because I'm doing that. They see me have a very full life, and they are seeing me doing it on my own terms, and they see me happy with that. So I think that it's a really cool way to say you can have it all, so to speak, but it doesn't have to be perfect. None of the pieces that I just mentioned have to be perfect. And I think that's one of the coolest things that I can show them as a mom so that they can take that into their own life in the future.
Hi, it's Cassie from St. Albert. I have a question about being a mom and running a business. How do you run your business while taking time for the kids and being present in the moments while you're still running your business?
I actually talked about this a little bit in episode 3 when we talked about my weekly schedule. But the most important part to take away from that is not necessarily the weekly schedule, but that concept of non negotiables. So if you go back and listen to that episode, you will hear me highlighting some of my non negotiables. And for me, time with my kids is one of those things. So knowing that that is a non negotiable in my calendar, that is written in a permanent marker, that's one of the ways that I manage both, really, is just to make sure that I never allow my business to take over my motherhood, and I never allow my business to take over my personal life. And of course, there are temporary blips of that, when you have a launch or you have a push, or for myself, the weeks leading up to an event. But again, that's all a temporary time. I'm not operating in that energy and in that timeline the majority of the time. The other thing that I think is really important is that when you're working, work. When you're working, work. So much of what we do is we get into the workday and we are just kind of loosey goosey. We're on social media and we're going and getting coffee, and like, yes, I love all of that. But then what happens is once that time, comes where we should be clocking out, or when it's time to go get our kids, we're like, oh my goodness, I didn't get things accomplished that I wanted to today. So then what do? You try to catch up while you're with your kids, or you're having anxiety, or you're checking your emails, you're on your phone. And that's when we start to feel guilty, right? So when you have your blocks of time when you are working, work. When you have your blocks of time when you want to be mothering, mother. And both of those are getting the best part of you. Now, the last little bit there, of course, life happens, things happen. It is perfectly okay if you have something come up and you quickly answer a message when you're with your kids. It is perfectly okay that when you're working, the school calls you, you have to go get your kids. You're not going to be like, I'm in my work block, sorry. There has to be some flexibility there. But all of those things should be kept to a minimum, because when you are doing everything at the same time, you're feeling like you're doing nothing well. And that's when we feel messy and chaotic and like we're not accomplishing anything. So I think that's the biggest piece of advice that I can give you.
Hello, this is Tara McDonald from St. Albert. My question for the podcast is, what do you think your inner child would say to you if she could see the clubhouse you've built today?
Whew. Yeah, this one hits. I think my inner child would say to me, I'm proud of you. And I'm proud of how inclusive you are while also maintaining a lot of self respect. I think that can be really challenging as women. And this happens to us from early on, from the early preteen, if not even younger, which is so sad years, where a lot of exclusion happens, a lot of comparison happens, a lot of competitiveness happens, and I just don't subscribe to that. If you are in my inner circle, you hopefully know how inclusive I am, and that does come from from some experiences that made me feel terrible when I was younger. So I've always vowed to never be, excluding anybody or to make anyone feel less than. Everyone is welcome in my circle as long as they behave the same way and with respect and with inclusion and without gossiping and without that really matters a lot to me. That's really, really important to me. It's a value that I hold really dearly. I do think that inner child would say, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for having open arms for everybody while still having boundaries and how you want to be treated and how you allow those who are in your inner circle to be treated. I have very, very little tolerance for disrespect, for exclusion, for gossiping. I love when women are really supportive of each other. I love a girl's girl. I think that that is such an important part. And that is really how I try to live my life. And it's how I try to also be in my business and to be very inclusive and to be very respectful of everybody. I think she would say, I'm proud of you. You go get them.
Hey, Sandra, it's Amanda. Question is, what is the most liberating thing about finally admitting that you don't have it all figured out?
Whew, liberated she is. There is really so much freedom in admitting that you don't have it figured out and that you're not perfect and that you did not, quote, make it. I think one of the biggest pieces there is it releases this pressure that you've been holding, and it allows for so much creativity and continued growth. Because if you think that you need to have it figured out, so to speak, or if you think that you need to show to other people that you have it figured out, it really creates a bit of this bubble that you have to operate within and stay within. And it does really hinder a lot of creativity. It hinders a lot of potential growth we could have, because life is not a straight line. There is no, call it, endpoint. We ebb and flow as human beings, especially as women, we ebb and flow. So I think that by admitting that this is just forever a journey, you allow yourself so much potential to explore new things as you evolve as a person. And there's so much freedom in that, and so much beauty in that, and so much growth in that, not just as a business owner, but also as a person. And on the other side of that, too, I think that it really allows you this freedom to ask for help. Because if you are walking around saying, whether it's to yourself or to the outside world, I have this all figured out and I don't need anybody and we're good to go, then you've created this bubble around you where you look like you don't need anything. And then you stop feeling like you can ask somebody for something. And I very much speak about this from experience, because I do think that in my past, and this is actually something that I still very much struggle with, so I'm working on it, not intentionally, but I think there is this perception sometimes that I don't need anything and I'm very independent and I got this. but I do sometimes need things, and I do sometimes need people, and I do need someone to rely on, whether it's for, can you watch my kids when I'm sick, or, I'm having a really hard time. I need someone to help me heal my heart right now. I am still human. So the more you allow yourself to be in that zone of, I don't have it all figured out and I am still soft, and allow yourself to be in that feminine, the more you're likely to open up and have those beautiful human connections, in addition to, like I mentioned, your own personal growth and creativity. So that's it. That's all for part 1 of our Ask Me Anything launch party edition. I'm really excited to dig into part 2 next week. I will see you there.